Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for that welcome. Can I thank AQL and Adam Beaumont for hosting us at this extraordinary, iconic location. And we're here today to talk about our long-term economic plan. And there can be no doubt that that plan is working in Yorkshire and northern Lincolnshire. 114,000 more people in work, 250,000 new apprenticeships, 22,000 new businesses, thriving firms like the one we're standing in right now. But behind all these figures are people. Mothers and fathers now working who can provide for their children. The teenagers who are now learning a trade and feeling the self-esteem that comes with that. The young people who started a business, won their first client, got that first paycheck. That is what our plan is all about. Securing a better future for everyone in our country. In a few minutes, George will talk about how we'll continue to see through this plan in Yorkshire and northern Lincolnshire. But first of all, I want to say something about our overall approach. When it comes to rebalancing our economy, this is a government that is optimistic, that is forward-looking, and above all, is focused on the long term. First, we're optimistic, and frankly, I think that is long overdue. For decades, we've had relentless defeatism, that the North would always fall behind, that Britain was an economy of two halves, and there really wasn't much we could do about it. We've even heard recently that our northern cities are falling behind in this recovery. But that is simply wrong. As a government, we just don't buy this gloom and doom narrative. Look at the dynamism of cities like Leeds and Sheffield. Look at the science base that we've got here. Look at the great universities, the proud industrial heritage and proud industrial future. And look at what has already been achieved in less than 5 years. The doommongers said we would lose 1 million jobs in Britain and there would be devastating job losses outside London. Actually, we've seen 1.75 million more people in work, and 70% of that rise has come from outside London. Right here in Yorkshire and northern Lincolnshire, for every 1 job lost in the public sector, 6 new jobs have been created in the private sector. On every major measure, this part of the country is going in the right direction. Unemployment down, productivity up, and this is the story of this recovery. Where are exports growing fastest? Not London, the North East. Which region has seen the most apprenticeships start? Not the South East, the North West. I'm not saying the job is done, far from it. You don't turn around a tanker in 2 minutes, and you don't rebalance an economy like Britain's in just 4 years. But we are optimistic that if we stick to this plan, we truly will see a whole nation recover, with new economic life felt in every town and city in our country. Now, this is a government that is forward-looking too. A lot of that defeatism I've mentioned was based on a wrong-headed notion, the notion that parts of our country are only suited to certain industries, and when those industries die out or the jobs go overseas, that's it, the end of the line. But again, that's wrong. A few weeks ago, I was at Dean Clough Mills in Halifax. At the turn of the 20th century, it was a huge textiles mill, the biggest carpet manufacturer in the world. When that factory shut down in the 1980s, many felt those jobs would never come back. But today, 4,000 people work in that mill complex, in insurance, in financial services, in technology. There's a theatre, there's a new hotel. This is a perfect example of how a place which once hummed with pistons and production lines can come back to life. And that's why a big part of our approach is about embracing new industries, like, for instance, green energy. For decades, the Humber has carried power to the UK in the form of coal, oil and gas. We said this place can lead the revolution in wave, wind and tidal. We spent 4 years negotiating with Siemens, and now Hull and the surrounding areas are becoming the centre of the world offshore wind industry. There's going to be a new manufacturing plant, 1,000 new jobs, and thousands more in the supply chain. And this embrace of new industries is happening all over this region, from agricultural technology to advanced engineering to digital. Now, above all, our approach is about the long term. For years in our country, regional policy went something like this. Whitehall draws up a blueprint for change. You shuffle a few jobs around the country. You prop up a few failing industries. And guess what? It doesn't work. It was all too short term. putting a sticking plaster over underlying problems instead of actually fixing them. Now, our approach is the exact opposite. The word long-term runs right through everything this government has been doing, whether it's dealing with our deficit, reforming our pension system, fixing the welfare system, and it's the same with rebalancing our economy. Our Northern Powerhouse Plan is a strategic, long-term view on what the drivers of growth actually are in a modern economy. And I think the answers are clear. You need excellent transport systems, a critical mass of skilled workers, broadband at super-fast speeds, a thriving science base, cities that people want to live and work in, and you need power held locally so people can drive change on the ground. Now, George will tell you now how we are acting on every front in this long-term plan for Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire, from investment in railway lines to technical colleges to world-leading science. On all of these areas, we have a plan to deliver. George, over to you.
Thank you. Well, as the Prime Minister says, the economy of Yorkshire is not just growing and creating jobs, but on many measures it is now leading the country. Since 2010, our economic plan has seen unemployment falling here faster than the UK average, private sector employment rising here faster than any region outside of London, average earnings increasing here faster than the national average, and now, in the most recent data, the fastest productivity growth in the UK. Our long-term economic plan for Yorkshire and for Northern Lincolnshire seeks to build on this. It sets as our goal the rebalancing of our national economy, ensuring that the economic future of the North is bright, if not brighter, than other parts of the UK. And we achieve that not by pulling down our capital city, not by pulling down London. It is a huge asset to this country that one of the greatest global cities on earth is located around 200 miles to our south. No, what we do is we pull the north of England up. And we'll do that by building our northern powerhouse, and the long-term economic plan for Yorkshire and for Northern Lincolnshire is part of delivering that. Let me take you through each of the components of our plan in more detail. First, our ambition should be to increase the long-term growth rate of Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire to at least the expected growth rate of the whole United Kingdom. Now, over the last 4 decades, the growth rate has lagged behind the UK as a whole. As the Prime Minister was saying, previous governments have tried to change that but failed. In my view, that is because their plans revolved around disparate capital investment projects and the relocation of government jobs. What's been lacking is a broader, coherent strategy that covers the whole of the north of England and is rooted in the knowledge that to have a strong economy, we must have a strong, dynamic private sector thriving alongside our public sector. That is what our commitment to a northern powerhouse is all about. It's based on solid economic theory that says the city areas of the north are collectively stronger than their individual parts, and that connected together they can rival any global city. And that is the thinking of Jim O'Neill's City Growth Commission too. It's an idea that has driven our vision for the north of England, and it's the idea that provides the means of reaching our first ambition. If the region was to grow as fast as forecast for the UK, we would add over £13 billion in real terms to the Yorkshire economy by 2030 than if the region continues to grow at its long-term average. That is an equivalent to an increase of over £2,000 per person. The second part of our long-term economic plan here is about jobs. I want to maintain the current high rate of job creation and ensure we have over 100,000 more people employed in Yorkshire and on the Humber during the course of the next Parliament. We do that by identifying and then backing the strengths you have here in Yorkshire in the private sector. Advanced manufacturing in South Yorkshire, like Boeing and Rolls-Royce in Rotherham. Renewable energy industries, as the Prime Minister mentioned, like Siemens in Hull and the Humber Gateway wind farm. Farming and tourism in beautiful North Yorkshire, where I've been this morning. And the creative industries. Yorkshire is fast becoming a centre for film and television production and is home to the second fastest growing digital sector outside London. We are quite literally standing on the servers that is driving that revolution. Now, what all of these industries need to succeed is better transport links, and that's the third component of our plan. Now, I'm not alone in believing that stronger agglomeration is a key driver of economic performance. As an economy becomes more knowledge-based, proximity actually is becoming more important. It's a central theme of our plan to create a northern powerhouse, and the third point of our long-term economic plan for Yorkshire. Today we commit to delivering £6.4 billion in new transport connections across this region. And that amounts to the largest investment in transport here in Yorkshire in our country's modern history. And this is not some vague promise. We are committing specific sums to road and rail investment here in Yorkshire. HS2, providing a high-speed rail service to Leeds and Sheffield, halving journey times between Birmingham and Leeds, cutting nearly an hour off journey times to London, and of course a massive boost to capacity. Supporting £2.7 billion of investment in brand new trains for the East Coast Main Line. Major upgrade works to expand the M62 between Leeds and Manchester and the M1 between Sheffield and Leeds. Taking the first steps towards a Trans-Pennine Road tunnel between Sheffield and Manchester. And fixing the worst bottlenecks on the roads in Yorkshire with 15 road projects worth over £50 million in total, benefiting Wakefield, Doncaster, Sheffield, Rothwell, Normanton, Castleford, Sheffield, Goole and Leeds. And today I announce we are going further still. HS2, and now delivering a plan for HS3 across the Pennines, will revolutionise connections across the north of England. This in turn will deliver a major boost to the economies of our great northern cities. And I want to make sure we seize every benefit of these once-in-a-generation infrastructure projects. We're going to do that right here in Leeds. Now, already one of the busiest rail stations in the country, with the arrival of high-speed rail, this city should be transformed. A Leeds Station Regeneration Board has already been established to look at how to maximise the benefit to the whole city. And today I can tell you that I've asked Sir David Higgins to produce an interim report to present to me in the autumn. I want this report to explore the options for a major redevelopment of Leeds Station to prepare for the arrival of high-speed rail. And I want us to make sure we're getting the maximum benefit too from our investment in the East Coast Main Line. To use that capability, work needs to be done to upgrade the infrastructure. Today I can confirm that the Department for Transport and Network Rail have begun the talks to develop a business case for the infrastructure improvements that will make 140 mile an hour running on the East Coast a reality. And this scheme could give towns and cities up and down the East Coast the fastest intercity train service yet. I want to see the east-west rail links here improve too, and that's why we're now looking at the electrification of the historic trade route between Liverpool and Hull through the long-awaited electrification of the Selby to Hull line. So investment in major transport infrastructure is central to our plan for Yorkshire, and we've committed real investment to make that a reality. But so too is backing the core strengths of the region's economy: advanced manufacturing, technology, food, energy and science. There are already many areas of scientific and industrial innovation here in Yorkshire, where you are leading the way with the rest of the country. Now we commit to centres of the new Royce Institute for Advanced Materials coming to Leeds and Sheffield, new quantum computing facilities at York University. But we need to unlock the other great ideas for scientific innovation starting to form in this part of the country. We've set aside £900 million over the next Parliament to fund new science investments, and I am today asking the government's chief scientific advisor, Mark Woolpott, to work with local universities here, local businesses here, to make sure we have strong proposals coming forward for major science investments here in Yorkshire. And I know there are already ideas here from Leeds University, for example, for a new Institute for Data Analytics. It's a great idea. I want to see this exciting idea and others developed in the coming months, and then, if they're good enough, we can back them. And I also want to make sure we're backing one of the industries that so often people think doesn't exist outside London, but actually has a huge strength here in this part of the country, and that is tech. We created Tech Nation to help promote the UK's tech industry outside of London. We're pleased to launch the new report today. We're launching it here in this city, and it highlights the strength of the tech industry across Yorkshire and indeed across the country outside London. There are now nearly 45,000 people working in tech here in West Yorkshire. And before this speech, I met here with some of the leaders of the tech industry, and you can feel the excitement, you can feel the ideas coming forward. Yorkshire also has a growing financial technology centre. I have today asked Claire Cockerton, the head of Innovate Finance, to look at building the opportunities for new financial technology, or fintech as it's called, across Yorkshire, and the case for establishing a new fintech incubator in Leeds later this year. I've heard in my meeting some people think we should go even wider than that with the incubator, and we will look at that and take that forward. Yorkshire has great strengths in finance and technology, but also in energy. I want East Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire to be the national centre for offshore wind. People talk about the Humber now as the energy estuary, and we will continue to do everything we can to support that at the national level. And as the Prime Minister said, the huge investment in Siemens is really exciting and a real opportunity to build on. The Humber Enterprise Zone is a huge success. I am today saying that we are going to seriously consider the case for expanding that enterprise zone, and I will give a report back at the budget next month on the case for expanding the Humber Enterprise Zone. The clean tech sector that is growing on the coast is going to need a lot of engineers. Today I can say we are approving plans for a new university technical college in Hull to train engineers for the renewable industry. It's going to be called the Ron Deering UTC. It's sponsored by the University of Hull and the Spencer Group, and in partnership with employers such as Siemens, it will provide up to 600 students with skills in digital technology and mechatronics and energy. And today I'm also delighted to announce a further £17.5 million government investment in skills, alongside contributions of £22 million from employers themselves here in West Yorkshire. And the funding will go to local businesses to allow them to invest in the skills of their workforce and to grow. Now, great transport, world-leading science and industry, skills to secure those industries for the future. These are all crucial ingredients to the long-term success of the Yorkshire economy. So too is a great quality of life. So the fifth part of our long-term plan sets our sights on raising the quality of life in Yorkshire and encouraging more people to visit this great part of the world. Tourism is a big and growing business. Each year now, 10 million people visit Yorkshire overnight, over 130 million visit for the day. And none of us will forget the brilliant Tour de France coming to Yorkshire. 3.3 million people lined the route. And it was a wonderful advert for Yorkshire, seen all over the world. I believe Gary Verity, the man from Welcome to Yorkshire, is here today. He made it happen. It's an absolutely brilliant achievement, Gary. And we want to back you with your ambition in the future. Let's set a target to increase the overseas visits to Yorkshire by 25% by 2020. I know that is consistent with your level of aspirations. As part of this, we'll support your plans to boost rural tourism and to hold another great Yorkshire Festival in 2016. We'll get behind the Tour de Yorkshire in May and back a Yorkshire bid for the World Road Championships. I believe we should cement Yorkshire's reputation as the home of cycling in Britain. And of course, Yorkshire is also home to fantastic cultural facilities like the Hepworth, the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, the Henry Moore Institute and Leeds Gallery. There's the fantastic literary heritage from the Brontes to James Herriot. It's also an increasingly popular place to film as well. And we have had the King's Speech, Harry Potter, the History Boys, the forthcoming Dad's Army movie, which you might not have heard of, but is coming, is all being shot here and has been shot here. And we'll do everything we can to support Hull too as it prepares to host the UK City of Culture in 2017. And I can today announce we're providing £1.5 million to the Ferns Gallery in Hull to help it bring the Turner Prize to Hull in that year. Central to achieving a good quality of life is, of course, ensuring we have good quality housing available to all. Today, I can tell you we will support the construction of up to 20,000 new quality homes in Yorkshire and on the Humber through investing in infrastructure to unblock large stalled sites and helping developers access finance and investing in new affordable housing. As part of this, we've already shortlisted 5 bids for housing zones in Yorkshire and the Humber, including the Aire River in Wakefield, which is proposing to build over 1,000 new homes on the vacant Nestle factory site, and the York Central Housing Zone on the city's largest brownfield regeneration site. Since 2010, we've opened 450 academies, 20 free schools in Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire, with more in the pipeline. And there are over 12,000 more children in good or outstanding schools than there were 5 years ago. But if we increase education performance here to the very best in our country, we'd have 95,000 more children in outstanding schools, so we must keep going. The final part of our plan to build a northern powerhouse is to give the North a stronger voice. A powerhouse needs power. And I can tell you today that by the budget, I hope to agree a devolution deal to give the West Yorkshire Combined Authority the same kind of devolved powers as the recent Sheffield City Region devolution deal, including powers over skills and support for business. And my door is always open to cities who want to take even greater control over their own affairs. So let me be clear. We have a long-term economic plan for Yorkshire and for Northern Lincolnshire. It is part of building a northern powerhouse. It aims to add £13 billion to the local economy and 100,000 jobs. It is the biggest investment in transport in Yorkshire in our country's modern history. It backs our industry, it backs science and skills, it raises quality of life through new housing and supporting Yorkshire's unique cultural and sporting strengths. It is a prize worth having, and with your help, we will deliver it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We've got a great audience here of business leaders, of local councillors, local members of Parliament, also representatives of the press. I'd be very interested to have some questions from all of those sections, but who would like to kick off? Questions and points and about what we're talking about today. If you could say who you are, there should be roving microphones. Or has that stunned you all to silence? Gentleman at the 3 rows back. Thank you.
A question, if I may, for the Chancellor, regarding the investment programme for manufacturing and the need to create some stability, some visibility with respect to capital allowances and certainly a continuation of the R&D tax credits. Very, very positive moves for manufacturing in the region and also nationally. Stability is very important, and I know the Prime Minister has voiced the need for stable environment for manufacturing to invest and have confidence in the economy. Can we have some views on your thoughts on certainly capital allowances continuing at their current rate? Because at the moment in time, of course, the current regime, current policy is due to expire on the 31st of December 2015.
Well, I have got a budget on the 18th of March, so I don't want to, much as I'd love to get the budget here in Leeds. I mean, look, we have absolutely got behind companies, particularly small and medium-sized companies, with our annual investment allowance who want to invest. It does expire at the end of the year, and I can't, as I say, announce tax policy here, but people, I think, can judge myself and judge, indeed, the First Lord of the Treasury by our actions. You know, we stand here with a track record of delivery, of backing business, of backing manufacturing, of increasing support for research and development. You see it in the results and the jobs created here in Yorkshire. So the budget will be absolutely consistent with the themes that we have developed over this Parliament, the long-term economic plan that has delivered the fastest growing major economy in the world in the last year. That's what the budget will do. It will set out the next stage of those things so you can see what we've done, and they are not a bad guide to what we'll do in the future.
Good, thank you. I think we've got a press question from Nick Watt from The Guardian. I can see at the back.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Nick Watt from The Guardian. Prime Minister, François Hollande and Angela Merkel are today in Kiev and Moscow on a peace mission. Do you welcome that? And is it a sign of the UK's semi-detached relationship with the EU that you're not part of that mission? And on the domestic front, Nick Clegg has today outlined plans to eliminate the budget deficit, but to do so in a way in which the rich would pay more through tax increases and the poor would suffer less through more benign welfare cuts. Is not that the sort of programme that a one-nation Conservative Prime Minister should be outlining? And just whilst we've got the Chancellor here, Chancellor, can I ask you, the ECB appear to have laid down a marker with Greece. Do you feel sympathy for your new Greek fashion advisor, or are your sympathies with the ECB?
Very good portmanteau question. Let me start, first of all, with the Ukraine. Look, I welcome what are known as the Normandy format meetings with the Germans, the French, the Ukrainians and the Russians. I think it's sensible for those talks to go ahead. I think actually what Britain has done is actually led the charge in Europe for very strong and tough and consistent sanctions against Russia. I think Britain has helped to hold together a coalition of countries, including, of course, the Baltic states and Poland, but also everyone in the EU, who I think have put through surprisingly tough sanctions against Russia and done that in a way that has been coordinated with the United States of America. And I think that has brought pressure to bear, and we can see that effect on the Russian economy, combined with the lower oil price. There is real pressure being brought to bear so that Russia changes direction. And I wish the talks well today, but Britain will continue to play that key role in the EU of making sure we keep the pressure up and we keep the pressure on. On the issue of the second part of your question, look, I don't think it is right to have a plan that involves really quite substantial tax increases that would hit hard-working people. I think that what we need now is the plan that the Conservative Party has set out, which is to eradicate the remaining deficit, to start to put money aside during years of growth for a rainy day, and to do that principally by making sure we continue with the efficiencies we found in government spending, to make sure we bear down on the welfare budget, and to continue to take the same amount of money, which we've done during this Parliament, out of excessive, aggressive tax avoidance and evasion. That's our plan. That is the correct plan. And really, the election will come down to a choice between that plan, which continues with the competence and the sensible economic management that's delivered the fastest growing economy in the Western world and 1,000 jobs a day. The choice will be between that competence and the chaos that a Labour government with Ed Miliband and Ed Balls in the Treasury would represent. That will be the key choice. George, over to you on the ECB and Greece.
Well, competence and chaos is the same choice that Europe faces. And we want all sides, the Greek government, the European Central Bank, the Eurozone, to work together towards a settlement that brings stability to the Eurozone and brings growth to the Eurozone. You know, what the Eurozone needs is not just fiscal responsibility, which is, of course, incredibly important, as we know in our own country, but also the other components of a plan. The economic reform of the kind that we've been setting out today here in Yorkshire, the support from the central bank, which the ECB is now providing, you could say, finally. And those components make for a plan that is supporting Europe and will be good for our country. I would make this point. I mean, here in Yorkshire, that the biggest international risk to our economy is this instability in the Eurozone. We know from our recent experience that we are affected, because we export so much to the continent of Europe, when there is instability in the Eurozone. So it's in our interest they come to an arrangement. And it's also within our power to make sure our own house is in order, to prepare ourselves against whatever the world throws at us, whether it's Eurozone instability, problems in the Ukraine, or whatever, by working through our long-term economic plan, and that is the choice that our country faces in the next couple of months. We have a choice. We can either go on working through this long-term economic plan and the long-term economic plan for Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire, which is delivering the jobs, delivering that brighter future, or we can go back to the chaos, back to the imbalance, back to a country where the North and the South were growing further apart. That is not where we want to go.
Thank you very much. Sir, if we go to a microphone, lady's going to bring it down. Thank you. If you could say who you are and your business, where you're from, very helpful.
Thank you, Prime Minister and Mr. Osborne. It's Andrew Latchmore from Shulman's. A question regarding rail infrastructure. We heard from Sir David Higgins in your last visit to Leeds in October, or one which certainly I was privileged to be there, that you're strongly in favour of what's called HS3, delivering the Sheffield, the line from Liverpool to Hull. You've mentioned today electrification of the current line, but if you're elected into government in the next session, will you be bringing forward legislation to build a new HS3 line which could deliver the travel times of Manchester to Leeds in half an hour as envisaged by Sir David Higgins' presentation?
I'll ask George to answer the question on HS3. I would just make the point, I think it's important about all of these plans is, as George said, these are not just ambitions for the future. This includes things where work is underway now, such as the work, as you reference, on the electrification of the Transpennine Line. I think it's really important. This is a plan that is rooted in what the government is already achieving and plans going ahead. But HS3 specifically.
Yeah, well, the Prime Minister's right. First of all, judge us by our record. We have put money into the Northern Hub, into the Transpennine electrification. We have backed HS2, legislated for HS2, seen off people who didn't want us to proceed. I think that's going to be a huge benefit to Yorkshire. And what I've set out today is a proposal to look at the redevelopment of Leeds Station. I think there's a huge opportunity. It's clearly a station under a lot of strain at the moment because the number of people who use it. Let's think long term about this. Let's not have HS2 arrive and then suddenly think, oh, well, we haven't got the right station for it. And indeed, David Higgins has already looked again at the plans of how to bring the line into the centre of the city. Alongside that, there's HS3. Now, the concept there is to speed up journey times across the east to the west of the north of England, all the way from Liverpool to Hull. And, of course, there's that crucial bit in the middle in the Pennines. And he is going to produce his work for me on that next month, on how we take that forward. But it's an idea that I'm very strongly committed to. And it's not just a rail project. It's central to this concept that the cities of the north would be stronger if they were more closely connected. It's often said, it's an interesting observation actually made by one of the local government officials here in Leeds to me, that the central line in London, the tube line, is longer than the distance between Leeds and Manchester. And of course, hundreds of thousands of people use that tube line the whole time. And yet the journeys, you wouldn't believe it always on the M62, but the journeys between Manchester and Leeds are not as regular as you would expect between two large cities. And that, I think, is because people don't want to get on that motorway when it's so jammed. And talking to the tech entrepreneurs here earlier, they were actually saying, we'd love to know more about what's happening in Manchester in tech. And it's not that far away. And so if you create these better transport links, which HS3 is about, I think you bring these cities of the north closer together, and that's how you create your northern powerhouse. Because then you do have a population that not only matches London, but matches New York or Tokyo or wherever. And so it is a very important part of the northern powerhouse plan.
Thank you. Couple more. Gentleman here.
Thank you. Joe Volitsky, I'm a business analyst for an insurance broker here in Leeds, SME Insurance. I can now say that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister have trampled all over my backed up code.
Well, I'm hoping we're not going to fall through, but it is pretty secure.
Thank you. For either or both of you, what do you think about the idea that conservatism grows with age?
I've always found this actually rather insulting, this idea that, someone once said, if you're not a socialist before you're 20, you haven't got a heart, and if you're not a conservative after you're 40, you haven't got a head. I've always found that completely wrong, because I think if actually you apply conservative principles to problems of making sure you back enterprise, you back families, you believe in a big and strong society, if you do those things, you're actually more effective at tackling poverty and deprivation. And that, when we talk about long-term economic plans, what this is about is giving people the ability to lead a more secure, successful and prosperous life. We talk about 1,000 jobs a day. That's a statistic, but that is effectively 1,000 families where someone now has a wage packet, a chance to help their family lead a better life, work's the best route out of poverty. And so I don't accept that you need massive state redistribution in order to achieve a strong, growing economy that can deliver for people, including people in poverty. What you need is good, proper, conservative principles applied, which is what we've tried to do here. So that would be my thinking, but good luck with your servers and your code, and thank you for giving us such a great place to speak today. Let's have one last question from the gentleman up here on the left-hand side.
Stephen Noblet, United Kingdom Trade and Investments, Head of Food and Drink for our region. It's a question to both of you. In the long-term economic plan for Yorkshire, how are you going to assist our companies with their exports, which are really part of the driving force for many of our food and drink companies in this region?
Well, you've got a brilliant new spokeswoman in Liz Truss, the Agriculture Secretary, who at cabinet meeting after cabinet meeting keeps reminding everyone that actually food and drink and food technology is the largest manufacturing sector in Britain. And I think there's more we can do, frankly, to lead the export drives in terms of British food and British food tech around the world. We're doing a lot of that in countries like China. I think we can push it harder and faster. One thing I think we need to do is sign more of these free trade agreements. It's very striking that when you look around that table in the European Union, 27 other countries, Britain is probably the strongest advocate of these free trade agreements. We signed one since I've been Prime Minister with Korea, and our trade with that country has more than doubled. And I want to go back to the other countries in Europe that were doubtful about free trade agreements and say, look what's happened with this deal. Now, come on, let's get out there and do the deal with India. Let's start doing the deal with China. Let's get the deal finished with Japan. Look what other countries, often smaller countries like New Zealand, are doing, signing free trade agreements, getting behind their food producers, and seeing their economies grow. So I think a all-out battle for these free trade agreements, starting with, obviously, the big one, which is the TTIP deal between EU and America. So real backing from UKTI for your businesses, and I've got business advisors here in the audience with me today who might be able to talk to you about it afterwards. Real backing for British exporters, but also these deals, which I think can make a big difference. Let's take one last question. Gentleman down here. Sorry, actually, let's have the lady here. I missed you out because you're on my right-hand side.
Sandra Corcoran, Pennine Cycles in Bradford. Very pleased that you came and witnessed the Tour de France when it came to Yorkshire. You've mentioned that and spoke highly of it. Just really a light-hearted question to ask if you'll be coming back to Yorkshire on the 3rd of May to watch the Tour of Yorkshire.
Well, I will certainly try to do that. The 3rd of May, I think, is going to be quite a busy week for me. I have a feeling, but I really do. I do want to pay tribute to Gary for what was done. I mean, I thought the Tour de France was just magnificent. I mean, you could feel it everywhere you went. I'll never forget going to Harrogate and seeing those enormous crowds, that thrilling finish. I've told the story before, but it will always stay with me. I had my young son, Elwyn, with me. He was only 8 at the time. And as we walked through the crowds, I'm pleased to say there were lots of cheers and go for it, and then there was a little section of the crowd, a little bit of unhappiness, and I turned to Elwyn, I said, don't worry, that's, comes with the job sometimes. And he said, no, don't worry, Dad. He said, that'll be the French.
I could say, oh, that was a good bit. Actually, this morning I was in the Dales, and I met a young couple who'd set up a cycling business off the back of the tour, and they were so excited about the way their business is growing and the way that wasn't just a passing event. And we're very serious about not just backing the Tour de Yorkshire, but also trying to bring the World Road Championships here. And we've also announced today, I didn't put it in the speech because I was talking about it in North Yorkshire, but we put some money also into improving cycle facilities in the Dales, in the National Park. So there's a real economic opportunity as well as a massive opportunity to showcase Yorkshire.
I think sometimes people think that tourism, audiovisual industries, sporting events are somehow peripheral to economic development. In my view, they're absolutely key. Events like the Tour or films made in Yorkshire are enormous draws in terms of tourism. In America, they ran a brilliant campaign once saying, you've seen the movies, now come and visit the set. And I think in a world where you're going to have enormous expansion of the middle classes in China and India, you're going to have massive amounts of extra tourism. I want to make sure we're winning that tourist trade here in Britain. Now that means, of course, investing in Visit Britain. It means the great campaign that we support and get behind, the extra money we're talking about today in Yorkshire. But actually it also means getting behind the things that people want to come and see, investing in our cultural, sporting, audiovisual and media industries, because they are an enormous success for Britain and a great draw to this fantastic country and also to this fantastic county. And I managed to get away without naming any more of the greatest living Yorkshiremen, which is always probably the safest thing to do these days. Thank you very much indeed for coming. This plan is something I want us to report back on regularly, so you can see the progress with these transport plans, with these universities, with the science investment, with the businesses we want to bring here to Yorkshire and Northern Humberside. I really am passionate, and the Chancellor is too, about this rebalancing agenda.
And
yes, I can see them in the front. This rebalancing of our economy is absolutely key to the future success of our country, and it's been great coming here today to share some of our thoughts with you. Thank you very much indeed.